Welcome back to the Sound of Loneliness podcast. We hope you are inspired by the voices of grit and grace we share in these episodes. A reminder to like, follow, and subscribe to the Sound of Loneliness podcast wherever you listen and to our YouTube channel. Before we begin, we'd like to remind everyone that this podcast is separate from our clinical work at Valley Connections Counselling. The contents of this podcast should not be used as a replacement to accessing personalized mental health help or support. While this podcast is separate from our work as mental health clinicians, it is part of our hope to create connection around the world and dissipate feelings of loneliness, even if it's just for this hour. Today's episode is called Mother Matters, Alma Care. So a few weeks ago, maybe a few months ago, I was watching the morning news and I saw a clip featuring Alma Care. This is Canada's first postnatal retreat. So the segment was the news anchor interviewing Hana and McConville, who's the co-founder of Alma Care. Immediately it caught my attention. I was so interested by this idea of a postnatal retreat and really fascinated by what Hana had to say. So I let Amanda know, shared with her what I had learned, and we both decided that we wanted to reach out. And we were so excited when Hana and Melissa graciously agreed to come on our podcast. We decided to release this episode on April 30th, even though we interviewed them about a week ago, because May is Maternal Mental Health Month. So we couldn't think of a better way to kick off observing this month than to interview these lovely ladies. So Amanda and I hope that you enjoy our interview with Hana and Melissa, the co-founders of Alma Care. Enjoy. Okay, so today we have the pleasure of sitting with the co-founders of Alma Care, Melissa Gallagher and Hana McConville. And we wanted to dive in a little bit and introduce your wonderful facility to our listeners. So just to get started, would you mind introducing yourselves and a little bit about how you got to know each other?
Hi, I'm Hana McConville, one of the co-founders of Alma Care, which is Canada's first postnatal retreat. We'll dive into a little bit more about what that means, but Melissa and I co-founded Alma just very recently, end of 2023, and we're excited to bring the concept to Canada. Melissa and I have actually known each other for some years now. We both have obviously previous lives to this. I'm also the co-founder at Greenhouse Juice Co. So we met while Melissa was on the founding team at Freshie there, kind of, health and wellness lives overlapped, and we've just stayed in touch since then. Both, mutual friends as well. Melissa's partner is one of my sister's best friends. And yeah, both have had children since then, kind of been through the postpartum journey and really stayed in touch, and both obviously feel very, very passionate about postpartum care.
Hey, and Melissa, how about you?
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having us. So, as Hannah said, co-founding Alma just this past fall has been a really exciting partnership for us. We have known each other for years in kind of the wellness space. And actually, just random fact, I also think I spent a lot of time with Hannah next to her on a treadmill at Barry's. And if you've ever done that, you will be nothing but impressed, because I don't think I've ever seen anyone sprint as fast as her. So just as a side note, but that is true. Yeah, so both of us, became moms. So we're in the health and wellness space and both part of some very important wellness brands here in Toronto, and have grown up kind of together in that space, and both becoming moms, and came together to, identify and address this gap. So yeah, it's been a short but really fulfilling journey so far.
Amazing. I am curious about how you came up with the name Alma Care. Did you come up with that together, or was that one of your ideas?
Yeah, there was a lot. I think one, we're, bringing a new concept that Canadians are unfamiliar with. So trying to building a brand is always tough, but trying to find a name that connected to what we're doing. So Alma means soul in Latin, so soul care. So it felt nice to us. I think it worked.
Yeah, it
Mhm.
sounds like it worked. It's interesting. I didn't know this background about how you guys met, and I mean, clearly you both care a lot about taking care of your physical bodies, but then to name this as the soul care as well, that's really interesting. I figured there was something behind that name. So what is Alma Care about? Melissa, do you want to take this one?
Sure. Yeah. Alma Care, was developed, as I said, to really identify or to address, I should say, the gap in postpartum care here in Canada. Having the lived experience, both Hana and I, and very different experiences with postpartum. But it very quickly became clear to both of us that there was a need for a innovative yet super culturally deep approach to postpartum care, and one that could draw on a lot of the multicultural experiences just around the world that are so different from ours here. So that, really culminated in what is now the Alma Care Retreat. And it's a place where new families, either directly from the hospital or, some point within their fourth trimester, can come and stay with us and have 24/7 care where mom is really the focus of that care. So often when baby is born, the focus goes immediately towards the baby, and mom is taking care of her new infant and less so taking care of herself. So the focus really at the retreat and through the Alma Care experience is to put the focus back on the mom so that she can, rest, recover, that she's supported with educational tools, and that she can really ultimately enjoy that fourth trimester and the beginning of her new life with her newborn. And not only those things during the fourth trimester, but then thrive as a family for the long term. So that's what it's all about. And it started as a retreat, but it quickly grew to at-home care as well, so that we could become flexible and really reach more families across Canada.
So, Melissa, you mentioned the fourth trimester, and that was a phrase that I wasn't introduced to until I got pregnant. And then I started hearing that this kind of term, and I was like, what is everyone talking about? It is 3. So I wonder if
Like, wait, there's a fourth?
there's a fourth, right? I was so confused. So I was wondering, Hannah, for those who aren't familiar with that, could you define or share a little bit more about what this fourth trimester is?
Yeah, I think that at least with us, the fourth trimester is the period, 3, 4 months after you give birth, where I think there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of changes when you're pregnant to your body, hormonally, chemically, physically, emotionally, like everything, there's so many changes, probably the biggest changes that we go through. And those changes continue after you give birth. So it's really that period of time where you're adjusting to life with your newborn. You're going through again a new wave of hormonal and chemical changes, and there's a huge recovery on your body as well. Labor is hopefully the biggest trauma most women will go through. Knock on wood that all things else go well with their health. It's a huge trauma on the body, and so this fourth trimester is this period of recovery. And I think it's something that, some people hear about it when they're pregnant and some people don't hear about it maybe ever, because when you get pregnant, it's this huge focus on being pregnant. And, there's a lot of actually self-care. You have to take care of yourself because you're growing this human, and you go from this place of like really being almost the center of your own world, the center of everyone's world, because you're growing a baby and you're pregnant, and there's a lot of care and thought put into you. And then you give birth, and as Mel mentioned, that thought and care moves towards the newborn.
Mm-hmm.
And, in preparing for the newborn, it's everything about the baby. It's, okay, what are the clothes? What are the supplies I need? What are all the things this baby is going to need? And I think women rarely prepare for what they will need until they need it. Do you know what I mean? Until they need it. So they're in their fourth trimester and they're like, I need this, like I'm suffering in these ways. And it's only until they've gotten to the point of either breaking or something's wrong, they're not healing properly, they're in pain, that they have to take care of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, we think of it as proactive health, really is, you're planning to take care of yourself so that you can have an easier transition into the fourth trimester.
This is so fascinating because I've always thought about it too. Like there's so much emphasis on the mom while she's pregnant. I've also noticed a difference between pregnant with their first baby versus subsequent babies. Even in the way society will have, like a big baby shower for the first baby. And then it's almost like, why don't we have any parties for when they're pregnant the second time? Because one of my questions for you is, how often do you anticipate getting second time moms having their third babies, their fourth babies? Do you think people are even going to think that way? Or are they going to think, well, you've had one and you recovered nicely, and so now you're having your second. It's easier to have your second baby, so you don't need the recovery and the care. Like, do you anticipate people realizing that every time you have a baby, there's trauma to the mother's body and there's care that is required, same as the first time?
So interestingly, we actually see mostly the second and third time moms who are coming to us because, first time moms, I think, to your point, you don't really you've never even heard the term fourth trimester,
Right.
In so many cases. And it's not yet ingrained in our culture that there is that period. And they're living in this bliss of, I'm pregnant and we're expecting our first. Whereas the second time moms, they come to us and they're like, I know I need this.
Because they know what
And
they've been through.
they know what they've been through, exactly. And they're like, does my toddler have to come? Could someone else look after my toddler? And then the third time moms come to us and they're like, do I have to bring the baby at all? Like, can I just come and get a bit of a momcation? So increasingly with the number of children or increasingly with the experience of giving birth, we see women know that they need this kind of care. And just similar, to Hana and I, within a few weeks of having your baby, you realize that there's a gap in care.
Yes.
And overwhelmingly, the response from women who have given birth had been like, oh my God, I wish this was around when I had mine. So yes, we actually do see them. I don't think anyone thinks after having one or two, like, this is easy. I think they realize just how hard it is. So
yeah, I don't think the moms think that. I think it's this conversation that happens outside, and the moms are like, oh, is it supposed to be easy for me? Oh, it's not supposed to be a big deal, right? And oh, well, now I'm supposed to just, know what I'm doing, and it's expected of me,
well,
right?
there's the risk right there, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that that's part of the gap in postpartum care is like kind of the mindset that we have in North America around motherhood. We've all heard it. It's, you'll know what to do when you're a mom. Like, things will be fine. It will all be instinct. So things that are said that are meant to be encouraging and to make us feel better, actually, once we've had the baby, make women feel quite alone. Because you've been told that you should know what to do.
Yeah.
You've been told that you will be fine. You will be told that everyone, women have done this for years with no support, like, it's okay. And so when you get home with your baby and you have no idea what to do and you don't feel equipped, then the thoughts go to, okay, so am I, like, is this a problem
Something's
with me?
wrong with me.
Yeah, something's wrong with me. And I think that there's this societal pressure or self-imposed pressure to do things on your own to prove that you can do it. You're like, I can do this on my own because, like, I'm a mom now and, like, I have these skills. And you don't want to ask for help. You don't want to admit that things are hard. So you've created this kind of, like, shell of loneliness and really overwhelming feelings. And then the way that I've seen it happen is then once you feel like you're a good mom, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 2 years down the line, and you feel confident in your skills, you can then say, oh, that was really hard. And that's what everyone says. Everyone's like, why did no one tell me this was so hard? When you've gone through, you're like, why did no one explicitly say how hard this was going to be? More like a blanket statement of this is hard. And I think it's because we're shielding ourselves. You're protecting yourself so that you can do it again. We want to be part of that conversation of shifting that it's okay to not feel confident on day one. It's okay to not know what to do. It's okay to ask for help. It doesn't have to be as hard as it is because you can have support and things can be different. Not saying it won't be hard, because having a newborn is going to be hard no matter what, but it can be more enjoyable, I think more fulfilling in a way that you don't have to just endure it and survive. You can actually have support in place so that you can thrive while going through this hard transition.
So that's perhaps the extra piece, right? I think we can go from pretending it's not hard, you've got this, you've got the instinct, everything will just come to you, to swinging the pendulum the other way and saying it's really hard, just deal with it, to it's really hard and you'll need help, and here's the support. So that, I think, is the middle piece. And that's also why we really wanted to talk to you, because you're then saying, here's one of the answers. Here's an example of what support and help can look like. Because I think I think back to, when our parents had us. I mean, it might be different for all four of us, depending on where we were born, where our parents had children. But my mother was in the hospital, I think, for a week with each of her 4 children.
Yeah, same.
Right? So, and that was just the norm. And OHIP covered that. And there were no lactation consultants because that was part of the help that you got. And, you could walk around while you were having your baby and you didn't have to have a birth plan written out. You were allowed to do that. And, there was all sorts of stuff that was just part of the norm. And now everything's very, very different. And
It's very different.
It's very
And-
different.
And I also think it's like people also don't remember that time before,
No.
what we think is the norm is 24 hours, 48 hours max, and you're out and you go home and you just do things on your own. And also at the same time, it's like, our parents' generation, or the people who might be saying, it's okay, you got this, you'll be fine, you'll know what to do, because they probably did know what to do when they went home because they had a week
Need
of
help.
support.
Mhm.
They had this week of support. So they're like, what, you're going to be fine when you get home from the hospital, because like I was fine when I got home from the hospital. But that memory of like that full week is a very impactful week of support and education and gaining confidence, really, to feel okay to be at home alone with your newborn.
Yeah.
I think one thing Amanda and I were reflecting on recently is the idea that because technically giving birth is so common, women give birth every day, they become mothers every day. There's this notion that what's common is maybe easy in some respect. Like, well, it's just, we all do it. And just because something happens every day, people are born every day, people die every day, that doesn't mean any of these things are easy, right? We need
No.
these supports. And a lot of times we focus on, the prenatal, the birth process. We have birth doulas. We even have death doulas. But where is the support for after?
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so happy that we're getting this opportunity to connect and really shed light on this gap, because just because it's happening all around us all the time, in no way does it mean that it's easy.
I feel like we're approaching it as if nothing else has changed. And even for our moms who gave birth, 40 years ago, in many instances, women weren't working full time.
Mm-hmm.
And that alone is such a massive shift in the ability to build your community. There's a pressure to go back to work, of course. There's pressures throughout your journey of getting pregnant around working. And we're seeing, women not returning to work as a result. But in addition to that, our moms are working. So where our mom's generation, their moms would have been staying at home and helping them take care of the baby. So there's all these other factors too that have really shifted. And yet the care is going in the reverse direction. So less support for these women as, the societal and professional factors are stronger for them.
Well, it's like that saying, like, takes a village. I think it takes a village to raise a family, and we are constantly removing the village and then blaming the family for not being able to handle things. And we don't just blame the family. We often look to the mother and we're like, why can't you do this? And then the mothers look at themselves, why can't I do this? Right? It's so hard. It's such a heavy thing to carry, right? But the village used to just naturally be there, right? And now what we have is an online village that gives us the illusion that we're not
Which
alone.
can feel good in the moment, but
and it also can create a host of other problems where we then have a bunch of lines of comparison of people who look like they can handle stuff that we can't handle, and look like they're fine when really they're probably not, or look like it's really hard but they can still seem to be stoic in those hard moments, right? And
It's not uncommon. I've heard a lot of new moms say that they had to go off Instagram, for example, because it was too hard for them
Yeah.
during the fourth trimester and even into the first year,
Yeah.
taking breaks from social media because it's too difficult to manage, what you've got going on hormonally and all of those pressures. I
Yeah.
don't think that's uncommon.
And you always hear it's the toxic positivity
Yeah.
of Instagram. So like, that again, those, whenever anyone shares something that's like meant to be positive or meant to
Yes.
encourage, again, kind of that the same thing as, you'll be fine because you're a mom, but shoved down your throat from all different angles.
Yeah.
It can be just another thing to overwhelm you during this really sensitive time.
Yeah, not necessarily the real connection that I remember you sort of mentioning when we met you the first time, talking about how people that come into your care center can meet each other. Sometimes they realize that they live down the street from each other, and then they end up, connecting over the long haul as they're raising their babies together and becoming friends, right? And that's the creation of the village, right? That moms need, that families need so much at this time, is not necessarily over the online system, but in real life, in real time.
Yeah. I think the community aspect, it's one thing I think that makes the retreat, because of course we have at-home care where you can have our certified care team come into your home and support you there. But being outside, in the retreat setting, I think it's a different kind of community you're creating even with the care team because you're with them 24/7. So there's a different feeling than them coming into your home for even 8 to 10 hours. It's a 24/7 care. So you're creating a community within the care team, but then with other mothers as well, who are going through a similar thing, a similar stage that you're going through. And sometimes it's, it's not even words that need to be exchanged. It's just knowing that there are people who are there doing this exact same thing as you. You can see it in their eyes when you look at them, that it's like how, I'm sure we've all been there at various points with our children where you're walking down the street with your kid and maybe your child is screaming or crying and like you're just doing your best and you see someone else in the exact same situation and you just have to lock eyes and it's like, okay, we've got this. Like, we have got this because this is normal. Like this is, this really, really hard thing that I'm doing right now is not abnormal and I don't feel so alone in this anymore.
So Melissa, would you mind sharing a little bit more about the care team and kind of the services that you offer, maybe at the retreat and in home as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Our care team is so special. It's led by our director of care. She's a birth and a labor nurse. So she's, I think, delivered like thousands of babies and oversees our care team and has built it in a way that is really a holistic approach to caring and sharing of birthing experiences. So, or birth work experiences. So we've got registered nurses, we've got international nurses, we have perinatal support workers, we have midwives on the team, we've got doulas, postpartum and full spectrum doulas on the team, lactation consultants, and then we have people who are, experienced caregivers, ECE workers. So it's a really, really like fulsome approach to care for the family. Everyone is very passionate about our mission and have, aligned with the goal of revolutionizing postpartum care. All of them are deeply passionate about taking care of women during that fourth trimester, as well as children. They're all very, they're baby whisperers. So all of those things, and they all bring very unique experiences. I bring international care up because we, I think, recently brought on, well, actually two interesting team members that we've just brought on this past week, even one who just joined us, and she's worked in China as a confinement nurse. So working directly in that country and bringing those cultural experiences to our team, which, our mission is really based on a lot of the learnings from the way that the Chinese culture approaches postpartum care. So that's really important to us, and we're so grateful to have her on the team. And we had someone who just moved here 3 months ago from Ukraine and had been working in birth and labor at one of the hospitals there throughout the war and supporting mothers. Again, a very different approach that they take there, a lot more focus on the moms. And, we're so grateful to have a very experienced team and very deep in cultural roots, even outside of our own experiences here in Canada. The team works both in the retreat and at home. So many of them who work in the retreat will work at home as well for at-home care. So they're able to bring in those experiences into the at-home care.
So if somebody contacts you, say in their second trimester, and they're expecting their baby and they want to look into getting connected with Alma Care, what kinds of things could they expect, or what services could they choose to receive?
Yeah, for sure. So I can speak to that. So again, our goal is we know everyone has unique situations and every family is different. So we really want to learn more about, our potential guests or clients' situations, what their major concerns for postpartum is, so we can curate their education. We want to know, what their budgets are, where, like, do they want to come into the retreat? Do they want to be at home? We work with a lot of great partners across the city that I think there's a lot of services for postpartum women that they're not familiar with. Like your baby is gassy, you can see a pediatric chiropractor, and
Right.
that could help. Like you can have acupuncture postpartum if your back is hurt. Other than just massage, there's a lot of other services. So every guest can customize their stay. So, we can organize for them to see a chiropractor, see an acupuncturist, see a therapist, see, whatever it is that their concerns are, we can also curate that. And again, because enjoyment is one of our pillars of care, we also have things that we can organize, like a newborn photo shoot and things that they can add on that shed the fun side of having a newborn onto it and highlight that. So we really want to kind of customize each of our guests' journeys to what they're looking for, what their concerns are, and what they hope to get out of the experience with Alma Care. And really what we hope at the end of it is that everyone who leaves us feels more confident, more well rested, and kind of ready to take this next step with their newborn.
And then sort of, Hannah, as a follow-up, then what would make somebody choose the retreat center version of Alma Care versus, say, I'm going to be at home, but I'd like you to still offer your services in my home?
Yeah, so I think the retreat is really special because you really have this dedicated time with your newborn without any distractions. So there's always this question of, oh, but especially because this is a new concept in Canada, the comfort of being at home. Like, of course, everyone wants to go home because it's where you're most comfortable. You're like, if I'm going to really rest and recover, I want to be in my own space, which is something that comes up a lot. But the way that I look at it and we look at it, and I think other cultures look at it, is that you remove yourself from this comfortable place because you're also removing a lot of responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
In the home, it might be where you're most comfortable, but it's also where you have the most responsibilities of, even if you don't have another child at home, you have laundry, you have dishes to do, you have organization to do. I think a lot of moms have like this, they have a grand plan. They're like, oh my God, I'm gonna be home all the time. So, maybe I'll do my spring clean out. So there's pressures at home as well as comforts. There's also pressures. So removing yourself from that space, you really have nothing else to focus on other than your rest, your recovery, your newborn, and learning these new skills that you want to acquire for this new stage of your life. The retreat is an all-inclusive retreat also. So we take away that mental load of having to prepare what you need. We have all the supplies that you would need for postpartum for you and baby, as well as things that you might not know you need. So things like a sitz bath or a C-section recovery band. Maybe you didn't know you were getting a C-section, and we have those things. So you don't have to worry about getting those things. We have things that you might not have access to at home. So, we have a Medela Symphony hospital grade breast pump on site which can be instrumental for many women in those first 7 days. And you wouldn't have access to it at home, or you would have to rent it. It's like a beast of a machine that actually needs its own little cart to be traveled around. So, it's not something you would have at home. And then you also get that, like, that 24/7, you can have people come into your home, but this 24/7 access to our care team at all times. You have the nursery. So, again, if you have someone staying with you overnight, your baby is probably sleeping in the room next door. So you really can still hear them, and you're still probably very in tune with them when you're in close proximity. But being able to have your baby in the nursery, you really can get this real rest because
Mm-hmm.
your baby isn't right next to you. Those instincts aren't like piquing your adrenaline every time you hear a noise. The parents' lounge, again, access to the community, having workshops, all of that. What's really great that we've seen is partners coming to the retreat and staying, and they're really they become really involved in this postpartum period. They're at the workshops, they're talking to the care team members. So which maybe might not be the same, might be the same at home, but might not be the same at home. Again, both partners are removed from their comfort, from their responsibilities, and they're both able to be involved in this resting, recovering, learning, and enjoyment that we're trying to curate at Alma Care. Yeah, I think it's a really special experience. I think it's hard. I think our guests say it the best. So, they've left us amazing reviews about their experiences, because if you haven't experienced it can be hard to picture leaving your home, leaving the comfort. But the people who have stayed with us, it's that their words I think are the most powerful. They say things like it's life-changing. They've leveled up as parents. I spoke to a guest who her baby was 2 weeks old and she's already speaking about having her second with us. And I was like, what? I was like, this is insanity. I'm like, you're the only person I know who's talking about their second in 2 weeks in to the first. So that I think is the really special. I think that that's really why Mel and I have done this, because we know, at-home care has been around. People have at-home care. There's access to that. But it's really this experience that is so special and is so transformative. As we were mentioning, because of this, likening it to the hospital stays that were the norm for 7 days. It should be something that is normal to have that time where you're so dedicated and focused on yourself, your newborn, your partner. It creates a really special, special time.
Mm. So, Melissa, you were mentioning previously that this is really rooted in Chinese practice of confinement. And I think it would be so interesting for our listeners to understand more about some of the influences here, the cultural pieces, and again, how you're bringing that and kind of normalizing that in the West. Because everything you just said, Hannah, I'm like, every woman deserves this. Every family deserves this. This just sounds so beautiful and inspiring to think that that could be what postpartum looks like. And in other cultures, it is more what it looks like. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more to the cultural piece and this practice of confinement. Hannah, if you wanted to start off.
Yeah. So I actually had the opportunity to do confinement with both my babies. My mom is from Singapore, my dad's Chinese Guyanese. So having the Chinese background, we were familiar with the way that postpartum is treated in the Chinese culture. And it was a really incredible experience. I think that, again, bringing it back to the village, generational homes, a lot, in the Chinese culture, a lot of families, parents will live with their children when they get older, and they all also kind of do this practice of helping confinement. And really what that is it's a focus on the mother. It's a focus on her recovery, on her nourishment, on her hydration, eating and resting and drinking broths and teas that promote internal recovery, that support lactation, a big focus on keeping the body warm, keeping internal heat so that you can recover and that you can basically thrive, so that you can take care of your newborn, that you can care for another life. And they really put a focus on the fact that in order to do that, you need to be very well rested and you need to be very well fed and you need to be nourished. That is kind of a little bit of the cultural background there. We definitely have taken inspiration in the retreat as well on that front, knowing that 30 or 40-day confinement or resting period isn't feasible for all people, or kind of, I think, unimaginable for a lot of people. But taking inspiration from that with the retreat, we put a big focus on the menu to make sure that we have a dietitian approved menu, making sure that all our guests are getting the proper amount of food, that with the proper nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals, mix of lean proteins and carbs, fiber rich carbohydrates and leafy greens and vegetables. Big focus on bone broths and teas that are made with Chinese herbs to, again, support the recovery, support the lactation. And so bringing kind of that inspiration so that we can, again, normalize that this is a period of rest and recovery. And you're doing that not because you're selfish or that you think, you deserve it. It's so that you can keep this baby alive by keeping yourself alive, and not just alive, but well rested, well fed, well taken care of.
The message I keep hearing on your end is like, there's a possibility to thrive in this period. It's not just about survival and enduring. There's actually the possibility that this could be a really beautiful, rewarding experience in and of itself, which is such I think, a headspace shift from what we normally think of postpartum when we've been through it, and it's been really challenging.
Absolutely. And for the much longer term too. So what you experience in these first, it's only a few months, the fourth trimester, but we know that your postpartum journey, is much longer than a few months, but really like the long-term benefits, not just by focusing on the mom and supporting, but also as a partnership and a family, the long-term benefits by setting them up for success in those early days are just, undeniable.
Yeah, it's hard to put even a monetary value on it because I'm sure our listeners would be thinking, well, I wonder what this costs. And yes, we talked about how a lot of this was built into our healthcare in Ontario previously. Some of this was not what we're talking about, but a little bit of this used to be built in. But it's interesting when we talked a little bit before when we met, Melissa and Hannah, you mentioned, how some of your clients would talk about how us as a society would discuss that we do put money into other stages of our life, into planning for things. I think, we put money into our education, lots of money into our education. Sometimes we put money into trips, we put money into our weddings, and we do put money into our families. Do we put money into this stage of our family planning? Not always. Sometimes we don't understand what this could do for mothers, for families, for this stage, for this fourth trimester that isn't talked about. So I am mindful that, of course, we're coming to the end of our discussion today, and I know that you both have things to move forward to, but I don't know, Melissa, if you want to speak a little bit to that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we know that cost is a factor and for all the reasons that you shared, it isn't covered right now by OHIP the way it was years ago. And it's not addressed by the public healthcare system at this point in time. So we know that it's an introduction of a new expense to many, many people, but the average spend on a wedding is $25,000 for a single day. And that's probably on the low end, depending on where you live. So, and that's one day that, yes, while you'll have beautiful photos and hopefully some great memories, it has much less of an impact than taking care of yourself and your family and your infant during that fourth trimester and during a time where you truly, like, undeniably need this care. So the things, to your point, the things where we spend our money right now and the importance that we put on things that will have far less of an impact on our future well-being, I think that it's going to take some time to shift. So we totally understand that. Right now, our retreat, it is all inclusive and it comes with 24/7 care, meals, workshops, all of your products and needs, as Hannah said, but it starts at $1,000 a night. And, for some of us, we think like, that's it. I would give you more. Like what can we pay? There's no dollar amount that I wouldn't pay to have that kind of care and long-term setup for success. And for other folks, it's a shift in wrapping your head around what that means in terms of your own finances and how you've planned for it. So we know it's a shift. And in that, we have modeled our business so that we can really revolutionize the way that everyone experiences postpartum care. So there's the retreat, which is, all the things that I mentioned and all inclusive. And then you've got the at-home care, which is far more flexible. You could do 4 hours a day, which can be more attainable for some families who have not, yet considered this expense. And then we also offer free educational courses online. So, we work with some of the most respected experts in the birthing and pregnancy space to provide some free resources. We also leverage our care team members to do that. So, we have all access points to make sure that we can really touch the lives of so many. And we understand that it's going to take, some time for this culture and this generation to kind of wrap their heads around investing in this because it is so different than what they're used to.
So I'm wondering, as we're coming to an end, Hannah, would you mind sharing with our listeners where they can find you, where they can get more information if they wanted to reach out?
Yeah, definitely. Can find us online, almacare.ca. Find us on Instagram, Alma Postnatal. Lots of great resources on there. Lots of insiders looks at people who have stayed with us. So if you want to get an idea of the experience, Alma Postnatal on Instagram. Just reaching out in any way to contact us. Mel and I are both eager to chat to people to help build their care plans. As Mel was saying, we have a variety of services, and we can curate those plans to each person. So whether that be a mix of the retreat and at home, we can figure out what your family's needs are and build their care plans around that.
Thank you, Melissa and Hannah, for sharing your time with us. Thank you for helping to shift our culture's perspective on this, for the soul care that you are providing for mothers and families every day. It is extremely, extremely important. We're very, very grateful for the work that you are doing. We know that it's in its infancy, and we will support you any way that we can along the way. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a great conversation as always.